Change is the name of the game this year for the southeastern Indiana representatives to Congress in Washington, and that's because of redistricting. The 9th District territory of Republican Todd Young has been pushed further west, and the newly created 6th District is massive. All are part of 19 counties stretching from Lawrenceburg to Muncie. Republican Mike Pence currently occupies the 6th District seat, but he's running for Indiana governor. So the race to take his spot is between Democrat Brad Bookout and Republican Luke Messer. Bookout grew up in Delaware County and for 15 years headed the family's home building and land development business in Muncie. He currently is an economic development consultant to cities and counties.
In my business, we have to live within our budget. When the money's out, we can't spend more. In Washington, it doesn't seem to be that way. They just print more money and keep spending. What are you willing to do, and how tough are you willing to get to cut the deficit and cut spending? And are you willing to be a one-term congressman to get that done?
Well, Dwayne, thank you for your question. I think you're right on point with what you're asking. My personal philosophy towards this is that Washington needs to be ran more like a business. Hoosiers need to be telling Washington what to do rather than Washington telling Hoosiers what to do. The first thing with your business, I'm sure, and with any small business, I've been a small business owner myself. My family's owned a small business for 4 generations. And one thing that we do when times get tough is we cut overhead. Washington needs to do the same thing. They need to quit finding things to spend money on and start reducing the budget. The second thing that they need to do, which any small business knows to do, is simply to increase revenue. And how do you do that in this economy? You have to build jobs, and you have to help businesses out, and you have to foster growth within the communities. That's the only way that we're going to get out of this thing. Congress does have 2 problems. The first problem is they can't stop spending money. The second problem is they loaned a whole bunch of money to the banks on Wall Street, and the banks on Wall Street are not lending money to small business owners in the United States. So if we can fix those 2 things, I think we'll be on the right track for the future. Thank you, Dwayne.
We all know that more jobs need to be created to expand the economy. What will you do to improve the business climate so employers will feel more comfortable hiring workers?
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate your question, and I first off want to thank you for having the courage to be a small business owner in the 6th Congressional District of Indiana. This is a hard-hit congressional district, probably one of the hardest-hit congressional districts in the entire Midwest from the economic downturn. I think that job creation and lifting up our economy is the #1 priority that we should have in the United States. That's the flag that I carry, and that's the flag that I will carry to Washington, D.C. I have worked with my policy advisor on ways and methods that we can create jobs in the 6th Congressional District. We've put our ideas and plans into an actual book that's over 500 pages long of ideas and projects that we can do right here in Indiana. I've been dedicated in my hometown community for the last 4 years creating jobs and working with business and industry. With the cooperation of commissioners, mayors, town councils, and the community, we've helped to create over 1,500 new jobs in my home community and create over $200 million in new capital investment. Just recently, Progress Rail is a locomotive manufacturing facility located in a defunct manufacturing building in my home community. They're creating 650 jobs and investing over $100 million into that new facility. That's the kind of reinvestment that we need to have here in Indiana. I've worked with a dozen other companies who have done similar things, and I'm committed to doing that throughout this entire 6th Congressional District. I hope you'll stand with me and stand strong, and together we can get this done. I want to use the congressional seat as a seat by which we can influence policy in Washington, D.C. and help bring funding and different types of programs and projects back to Indiana and back to the 6th Congressional District. There's a lot of funds with the EPA to address brownfield concerns at former vacant manufacturing businesses that may be sitting idle because there is contamination in the ground and no one's willing to take on that challenge of addressing that or taking liability for those chemical contaminations. So we need to address those things. There's a lot of money available with the Economic Development Administration to make these sites have updated water, sewer, infrastructure, facilities, rail spur access, whatever's needed to get people back working again. And I stand with you, Andy, so thank you for your question.
As of now, the National Farm Bill has not been passed. This makes it very hard on Indiana family farms to budget their money for the following year. If elected, what will you do to get these bills passed?
Well, thank you, Mark, for your question. I think it's an excellent question, and I, too, feel the same frustration that you do with the Farm Bill and the budget not being addressed properly by Congress. This is one of the reasons why only 12% of the population feels that Congress is actually doing their job. Congress has recessed early to come back to their home districts and start campaigning for yet another cycle. Meanwhile, they left your Farm Bill sitting on the table undone and left you with an uncertain future. That's why the current Congress does not have the best interest of Hoosiers and people all throughout the 6th Congressional District in mind. Mark, I ask you to stand with me, and we have to stand strong, and we have to stand up to that. We have to let Washington know that we mean business here in the 6th Congressional District. Currently, super PACs and huge corporations have bent the ears of congressmen and women all over the United States. Those congressmen and women unfortunately work for a lot of those folks, and they are committed to keeping their commitments that they've made when they took financial campaign contributions. I'm not that guy, Mark. The money that I receive, 98% of it comes from people just like you right here in the 6th Congressional District. I don't have super PAC funding, and frankly, I don't want it. My opponent is loaded up with super PAC funding. He has the Koch brothers, Exxon, all sorts of industries that don't have Hoosiers in the best frame of mind. So, Mark, I thank you for your question. I want you to know that I'm there for you. When I get to Washington, D.C., guys like you will have my cell phone number and will be able to contact me directly, and I look forward to making sure that your questions are answered and that Farm Bill is passed.
What are the chances for those of us going to college getting increased low-interest student loans from the government?
Allie, your question is great, and I think it should be the #1 investment that Congress makes in the United States. Education is our future. I have 3 young sons, and I know everyone out there listening has children, grandchildren, nieces or nephews or brothers and sisters. If we don't invest in tomorrow's generation, nobody will. That's our future. Other countries are doing it. In China, I visited China in June. I spent 11 days there, and I visited a high school in China. What I learned in China is that before the students even start first grade, they spend 3 years in kindergarten. By the time they get to first grade, they can add and subtract to 100, and they know the English alphabet forwards and backwards. We have to have that same sort of standard here in the United States, Allie. And I promise you that I think that post-secondary education is one of the greatest investments that we can make. Right now, we have a serious problem. I have a good friend whose daughter went to college, has incurred over $100,000 worth of debt, has graduated from the university, and now the jobs that she's being offered are in the $11 to $14 an hour range. $11 an hour is only $22,000 a year, and that is not sufficient income to pay back a $100,000 college debt. We need to address that, and we need to make college education more affordable for high school students and for people seeking college education all across America. So I stand with you, Allie, and I appreciate your question very much. I want to work hard on your behalf, and I want to make sure that we here in the district are addressing your concerns. In my home county of Delaware County, there's a company called Sallie Mae. Sallie Mae currently has 500 people on staff. What Sallie Mae does is they call people who've defaulted on their student loans, and they call them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That business is growing so much due to the defaults on college loans that they're adding onto the building and adding another 500 employees. I think that is a national emergency. People are going to college because it's absolutely necessary. We have to be the best trained, most well-educated country in the world. And in order to do that, when our students graduate, they have to have opportunities to go right into. So we need to work on the jobs, but we have to help students with their educational costs. So thank you, Allie, for your question.
As a retired military officer with 21 years of service, I see our veterans coming home today, and I'd like to know what you intend to do to ensure their long-term medical care, as well as integrating them back into the workforce after their tours.
Tom, I appreciate your question. That's an excellent question. To date, we have lost almost 6,500 servicemen and women in Iraq and Afghanistan. That is a small fraction compared to the amount that are returning to the United States who have been injured or have just been have served our country in an extraordinary way. I stand with the men and women of the United States military, always have, and I always will. They have made sacrifices that are in our best interest and for our safety and security that we owe an eternal debt of gratitude for. So I stand with you on that. I want you to know that once they return, I think that former servicemen and women who've served in the military should be afforded free college education wherever they would like to go, wherever they can get into, and whatever they want to do, any place in the United States. Once they graduate, they should be moved to the top of the list of job placement. That is the least that we can do for our servicemen and women that have served our country. Second off, I want to make sure that their long-term health care needs are met. We have to stand with them. Any problems that they have, we need to be there. That's what we owe them as citizens of the United States. So I thank you for your question, and I thank you for your service to our country.
I am concerned about the Constitution and how it's being trampled on in Washington, D.C. If I vote for you, I would like a guarantee that you will be accountable to the citizens, not to the party, and not for your own political gain. How will you accomplish this?
Sheila, I understand your question very clear. One of the biggest problems that we have in Washington, D.C. is divisive politics. That gets in the way of everything. Just the fact of one political party trying to outdo the other for some sort of gain or to make the other party fail has got to stop. This country was at its best, and we were all more prosperous and more happy at a time when we had good moderate Republicans and good moderate Democrats working together on behalf of Hoosiers. I served 2 years as president of the Delaware County Council. I was elected with unanimous bipartisan support of my peers, 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And I want you to know that I am willing to work with Republicans, I'm willing to work with Democrats, independents, people of all faiths and ethnic backgrounds. I will be there and I will work with them. I do things a little bit differently. I don't have super PAC funding. I don't want super PAC funding. I don't have big corporations funding my campaign. What I have is I have you, and I have the people of the 6th Congressional District. My opponent receives checks for $2,500. I receive checks for $25. On my business card is my cell phone number and my personal email address. And I'm committed to you that when I get to Washington, D.C., if I'm not living up to your expectations, you'll have my phone number and you'll be able to call me and let me know. So I make that commitment to you. I make that pledge to you that I'm here to work for you. My children live in this 6th Congressional District, and I want them to have opportunity here in this district. This place means a lot to me, and I know it does to you too. Our children and our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, they deserve a future, and it's time to work on behalf of Hoosiers. So thank you for your question.
The cost of health care is rising in America. The cost of Medicare is exploding in America. What government has historically done in the past to control those costs is just simply pay providers, the doctors and the hospitals, less money for the services they provide. My question is, when you go into Congress, is how do you plan to control those costs without putting it on the backs of your local doctors and hospitals?
This is a very divisive issue in the United States right now, and we need to work together to come to a solution that is beneficial to all. Unfortunately, that is tough to do, and there is tough forces in the way that are preventing some of these things from turning out in the benefit that everybody would suit everybody. However, with the current Affordable Health Care Act, I believe that the timing of this is very difficult. We're in the midst of a recession. The economy is down, and the divisiveness of politics is very difficult. With that being said, the Affordable Health Care Act has been passed by Congress, and it has been passed through the United States Supreme Court. At this point, we need to start working the bugs out of that plan. I admit it's not perfect, but I think we need to move forward with what we got. Massachusetts had a similar model of this. Unfortunately, there are people in the United States that simply cannot afford current health care as it is today. If I were to have a heart attack today, a pacemaker, average cost is $105,000. A week's stay in the hospital to accommodate that pacemaker would be an additional $50,000. That's $155,000 that middle-income, middle-class Americans simply don't have lying around. Without insurance and without being able to address those concerns, they would go bankrupt, and that's a travesty. I believe that we shouldn't burden all of the doctors and the hospitals with that debt. Right now, if they don't have the money to pay for it, unfortunately, they are being saddled and burdened with much of that debt. I think that debt should be shared throughout the United States. We have to work together on this cooperatively. It is simply unethical to deny people with pre-existing conditions health care. It is simply unethical to deny children whose parents can't afford insurance. It's unethical to deny them health care. I stand with the middle class, and I stand with Hoosiers in America, and I think we need to provide everyone equal health care.
44 states, including Indiana, have now applied for a waiver to opt out of the federal provisions of the No Child Left Behind law. What ideas do you have on the need to reauthorize this federal education law?
Well, thanks, Rob. I appreciate the question. Education is a super facet of our community that needs to be funded, and all children need to have an opportunity to advance within their own school systems and with their own settings. I agree that I like to have states having control over the schools. I like local decisions. I like local teachers, and I support local teachers, and I support public schools. I would work hard in Congress to make sure that as much funding as possible is directed back to the state of Indiana for our educational needs, to support our public schools and to support our students and teachers. I stand with our students, teachers, and public school administrations. I will work hard on your behalf, and you have my pledge that I will make sure that no child is left behind.
On behalf of the seniors of southeastern Indiana, I would like to ask, why is it that politicians always automatically assume that Social Security is a form of charity? They don't realize that it's money that seniors have worked very hard all their lives to earn.
Marie, I'd like to start out by telling you, you have a beautiful first name. That is my wife's middle name, Marie. So thank you for your question, Marie. I want to tell you right off the bat that Social Security and Medicare both should be set aside, independent of the budget and independent of cuts from Washington, D.C. They are yours. They are for America, and they are for American seniors to take advantage of. You've paid into that, and you're entitled to that. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I worry that my opponent, who is very intent on cutting programs and cutting government and eliminating all sorts of departments in the United States, would be intent upon cutting Social Security and Medicare. I stand with you, and I will be with you, and I will make sure that your Social Security and Medicare is preserved. So thank you, Marie, for your question.
As my representative in Congress, your job is to pass laws. My question is, will you maintain an oversight function to make sure that those laws are not countermanded by agencies and executive orders that oftentimes completely violate the essence of the law?
Alex, I appreciate your question. I very much enjoyed coming down to the We the Hoosiers event, the Tea Party event in Dearborn County, and speaking with you and your members. So thank you again for your question. I want you to know that, yes, Congress does pass laws. It is critical that that function is preserved in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of forces out there that try to usurp those powers and spin those things around, and we have to stand strong on that issue, Alex. So I stand with you, and I appreciate your question. Thank you. I appreciate your consideration of voting for me, Brad Bookout, as Congressman in the 6th Congressional District of Indiana. I've been married to my wonderful wife, Lisa, for 18 years. Together we have 3 sons, Brandon, Brady, and Brock, ages 15, 13, and 8. Those kids mean the world to me, just like I know that your kids, your grandkids, and your nieces and nephews mean the world to you. That's what it's all about. We have to have a future for our children and our grandchildren here in the 6th Congressional District of Indiana. I'm worried that with the divisive politics in Washington, D.C., the ineptness and inability to get along and to compromise, it threatens us all, and it threatens the future. It's standing in our way. I make a commitment to you to be a moderate, to go to Washington, D.C. and fight on behalf of Hoosiers to make sure that we are afforded excellent opportunities in the 6th District for our future generations. By trade, I'm a certified master home builder. My family has been in the home building business for 4 generations. We worked hard to build a lot of houses. Unfortunately, as you know today, small businesses throughout the United States are struggling. My personal family business is struggling, not to anything of our own fault that we've done or incurred, but due to the economic climate and the climate that we live in here in the United States. A business that is sustained for 4 generations is now threatened. I tell you now that if I go to Congress, I will make sure that small business is a priority. Small business is our biggest job creator in the United States, and if all small businesses incurred a tax cut, they could have an ability to hire another man or woman to work within their small business. I think that that's what it's all about. For the last 4 years, I've been dedicated to job creation in Indiana's 6th Congressional District. I've worked hard in my home county to bring home a lot of jobs. We've worked with several different companies, including Progress Rail, hiring 650 new workers, investing $100 million to make railroad locomotives. I've worked with Bell Aquaculture, a yellow perch farm that invested $50 million in our community, hiring a lot of workers. I worked with Mersix Corporation, who built a new $12 million building, went from 83 employees to 280 employees. I worked with Magna, DSC Trucking, Midwest Metals, and others. Together, all of these businesses have helped our community. We can do it right here in Indiana. I took an economic development trade mission to China in June. One thing that I learned when I was in China is that the average minimum wage in China is $1.50 an hour, equivalent of U.S. That is unethical and that is immoral to pay wages of that level. Unfortunately, here in the United States, we've been dragging our businesses and industry down to that level. I think that that is wrong. We have to have fair and balanced trade policies with these countries. Unfortunately, when I go to Walmart, everything there seems like it has a Made in China tag on it. Those are products and ideas and entrepreneurial things that used to be made right here in Indiana, and we can do it again. I've put my ideas and my thoughts on job creation and lifting up small business and entrepreneurial ideas in Indiana into a 500-page thick book. In this book is plans, projects, and ideas of things that boots on the ground, projects that we can do now. I wish to work with you in Washington, D.C. to help bring home federal funding to help get these projects started. Things to revitalize brownfield sites and get our old factories back working again. Get Hoosier men and women back in those factories. Utilize EDA funding, Economic Development Administration funding, to upgrade rail and transit systems and energy and utility infrastructure to those buildings to get them modern again. We have to compete with China, and that is the only way that we can do that. We are the best, we are the brightest, and we are the hardest working people in the world. There is no question about that. We need the platform and the foundation to put that to work and put that to use at and become competitive once again. I promise you, as your congressman, that I will do that. I will be that person that fights for you and fights for the 6th Congressional District of Indiana. I will use my position to lead, not to listen to super PACs, not to listen to big corporations, not to listen to Washington lawyers and lobbyists and Wall Street bankers. That is not me. I'm a Hoosier through and through, always have been and always will, and I want my kids and your kids to have a future in the 6th Congressional District. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless all of the 6th Congressional District of Indiana.
Early voting has already begun in Indiana, but if you need more information about how to vote, when to vote, and where to vote, contact your county clerk's office. Tom McKee, 9 News in Lawrenceburg.